Hello and welcome everybody to aidbees. This is your host Ashutosh, and I'm back with another insightful and interesting podcast today. Today we have with us two changemakers, a sister duo which hails from Haryana, and both of them have been doing such amazing job in terms of social activism and change making. They're both wonderful champions of social change, and the list of achievements just keep going on and on. Today with us we have Sanjoli Banerjee and Ananya Banerjee. Welcome Ananya, welcome Sanjoli to aidbees.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ashutosh. Thanks for having us.
Great. So today, before moving on to our questions and discussions, what we're talking about is how these two sisters came to this forefront of social activism and how they changed, how they brought waves of change in terms of the field that they work for, which is women empowerment, female foeticide, and education for men, along with mental health and menstrual hygiene. I mean, the list keeps on going on, but like we'll of course try to cover a lot many other things. Before we move on to the questions, I have a little bit of introduction ready for the both of you. Ananya and Sanjoli are two sisters hailing from Haryana, and since a very young age, they had a calling to spread awareness and drive change. Both of them are working across themes like women's rights, education, female foeticide, and of course, menstrual hygiene, mental health, etc. They are also the directors of NGO Sarthi, which was an initiative started by their father, and it runs grassroots level programs on mental health awareness and menstrual hygiene across various remote villages of Haryana. While I was reading their story, one of the most exciting things that intrigued me was this initiative that both of these sisters have started called the Susiksha Mobile Schools, which is essentially a free weekend school that they take out to the remote areas, and they focus on female education largely, and they focus on free education. With the list of achievements so far, if I'd like to start with Ananya. Ananya is currently a student of the Australian National University doing her psychology through the Chancellor's Scholarship. And when I speak about Sanjoli, Sanjoli is a graduate from the Australian National University in Canberra in International Security Studies. And she's also the recipient of the prestigious Diana Award. Both of these sisters have been featured on platforms like UN Women, UN India, UN Women Canberra, and their work speaks volumes in terms of NGO Sarthi and also the Susiksha campaign. So I'm really excited to delve into this conversation. But before that, Ananya, Sanjoli, how are you both feeling?
First of all, thank you so much, Ashutosh, for that very generous introduction. And it's a pleasure to be talking to you. And yes, I'm feeling excited. I'm feeling very well. And yeah, I'm just hoping to have a meaningful conversation with you.
Absolutely.
Likewise, like Ananya said, thank you. Wow, that was a heavy introduction. Puts a lot of responsibility on our shoulders now. But yeah, thank you for those kind words and thanks for having us. We're hoping for a wonderful conversation. And I'd also like to congratulate you and your team for the work you do at 8B. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much. So let's directly get into the conversation. Sanjoli, I'd start with you. Could you take our audience through, the beginning and the origin of this activism that you're talking about? Because I was reading in one of your feature stories that Ananya's birth actually led you to come into the field of change making, and that there's something that's the root of it. So, what moved you both to become change makers like that?
Absolutely. So well, like any other 5-year-old kid, I was as innocent as any other kid would be, not very, very super aware of the world around. But then, as the universe decided and as my parents decided, they decided to have another kid, and it happened to be a daughter. And well, my parents were quite happy at that, but some people in the extended family circle and around my parents were not so happy and they didn't share the joy. And contrary to what the law says, they got my mother tested for the gender or the sex determination of the kid, and it turned out to be your daughter, and it displeased a lot of people, unfortunately and very shamefully. And that led to my mom being pressurized to go for abortion. So against my mother's will, of course. And I don't know, it was a last minute epiphany that my dad had, or if it was the God's will. I don't know, call it whatever, call it a miracle. But Ananya was saved. My parents just escaped the hospital room, and they ran and they decided, they wanted to have this daughter. And I think that moment in itself was super powerful. Like, from there, our lives changed. And I was a silent witness to all of it. I wouldn't say I understood or comprehended everything very deeply, but definitely I was about 4.5 years old when this was happening. And I could see that stress around. I could see my parents being worried. So, but when they decided to have Ananya, and when she was born, with her, a huge movement was born. And that, I think that was the beginning of what we do today. And it's been, I think, if I do my math correctly, it's been about 20 years now that we've been running all of this. It was in 2004 that we started our first campaign against female feticide. And I think when you have a very personal experience, because we've all heard of things, we all hear that, there is female feticide, there is this issue, but when you go through it yourself, it shakes you to the core. And that's what my parents experienced. So they were like, if educated, privileged people from an urban area can go through all of this, imagine what women who are lesser educated, might go through, who cannot stand up for themselves or whose voices have been snubbed. So that is when they decided to take the leap. And with them was me, a 5-year-old girl. And I joined them in those campaigns. We started with Lohri. So Lohri is a big festival celebrated in north of India. And traditionally, it's been celebrated to mark the birth of a boy. So if there's a son who's been born, so you celebrate it with huge pomp and show. But if at a girl's birth, no one celebrated it. It was as if like, someone had died in the family. And I'm being very honest here. So Lohri was never celebrated to celebrate a girl's birth. But my parents just reversed that, and they said we will celebrate India's first Lohri Beti Ke Naam, or Lohri dedicated to the girl child. So that is when, in a village in Yamuna Nagar district, they went on to distribute cash awards to all the parents who had only girls, to
Oh,
encourage
lovely.
them and to kind of congratulate them and celebrate that fact. So that is what we did. Then we did an awareness campaign, and that is how we started. And after that, rest is history. We've done lots of protests, lots of campaigns, visiting bus stations, to standing at toll plazas, creating awareness and all of that. So I am sure we'll touch upon that later. Yeah.
Of course. And that's so awe-inspiring that it all started when you were 5. And Anya, I'm sure that you joined the wagon late, but what were your thoughts and where did you find your origin in terms of the change-making journey?
I think listening to this story for the first time, no child is prepared to know that when they were going to be born, it was not a matter of celebration. Rather, my parents had to have a struggle for that, which is unfortunate. And knowing the story, I think I was taken aback. It did shake me, but I was at the same time very proud, and I felt very blessed and privileged to have born in a family like that was not only sensitive enough to take their personal decision, but also it mobilized some change. It made them go out on the streets and think about people beyond themselves. So I think that was a moment where I think also I would not deny the fact that I was too young to understand all of these things, to comprehend and decide that, if I was, if I was driven towards these things or not, because having been grown up in an environment where, my mother is holding me in her arms and she's raising slogans, and, watching my sister, who is just 4 years elder to me, and watching her do the Nukkar Natika, the street plays very actively. And she was becoming, she was doing this role of a fetus, and she was encouraging other people, and she would get that like she would be part of all of those campaigns and change. And that's how I think I've grown up seeing all of that around me. And that's how I think I got inspired and motivated by my own family to make sure that I live for some cause and I do something that just does not give a meaning to my life, but also makes my life full of purpose and somewhat full of satisfaction as well. Yeah.
So that's like a very promising sort of mentorship that you got, and then the right kind of journey began thus. I was reading about the initiatives that you've taken, and awareness has been a very key concept in both of your journeys, right? Except I wanted to go beyond that a little bit and ask about some sort of action points that you took over in terms of your journey, and also if some numbers, if you could share in terms of making a bigger impact. Did you, because villages or largely rural areas have these sort of audiences or target audiences where you go and impact a larger number. So if you could just talk about those sort of numbers with our audiences.
Sure, I think I can start with the initial concept and then Ananya can take it forward. So,
Absolutely.
I think with our first campaign that was against female feticide, we visited a lot of villages. We visited more than 20 villages in India, and not just villages, because we don't think that only rural India is the epicenter of this. Actually, urban India is also very much equally the culprit of female feticide. It's just that it's more latent, it's more hidden, and no one talks about it. But lots of our schools, universities, public places. So we used to visit those places, and I remember, just standing at the toll plazas and distributing pamphlets to every car that passed by. So stuff like that we've done, and I mean, to be honest, back then we were so much driven by purpose that we never recorded the numbers. So we don't really have a big data around that. But we've covered a lot of places and we've reached a lot of people. And that was through direct and indirect engagement both. So when I say indirect engagement, through media, through documentary films, so all of those things as well. So apart from that, then in 2010, we started the campaign against environmental degradation. So we started working on creating awareness around climate change and stuff like that. So we covered 5,000 kilometers on road, covering 7 states of India in 13 days, stopping at various schools and colleges, lots of villages, screening the documentary that we had made as a family. So it's called Earth in Flames, and it is on our website. It's also on YouTube. So anyone who's interested can watch it. So that documentary, we were very amateur documentarians, not professionally trained at all. It was just that fire to create a difference that led us to do that. So a lot of research was done. We interviewed a lot of people. So we screened that documentary across schools and 7 states. So that is how we were continuously working on something or the other. We planted over 450 trees across north of India, lots of plantation drives that we did. So that happened. And then this was mostly being run and led by my parents. So we were quite young back then. I was 10 years old. So we were just doing that. But then when we took over the charge, then I started Buland. So under Buland, the menstrual hygiene project, we have reached over 5,000 girls so far, in just a matter of 3 years now, in cities like Delhi, in Karnal, in Jaipur. So we've done that work, not just in rural India, but in cities as well. So lots of schools we've aimed, we've interacted with them, busted the stigma, the myths around menstrual hygiene and what menstruation is. And we've distributed over 8,000 sanitary pads to these young girls. So that's happened. And then Ananya, I think, can talk about Abhivyakti as well, because she leads that project majorly.
Yeah, sure. So
We'd love to hear that. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. So Abhivyakti is the mental health project. And I think when you were talking about, what led me into this change making journey, I think one thing I can quickly share here is that I've always been driven by a particular emotion, which has most often been frustration and anger. I know these are not the most positive emotions, but I think I really see the power in getting bothered by something. When I say that, I think whether it's some personal incident, circumstances, or us being very sensitive towards our country or the world, there has to be one particular cause that bothers us and shakes us in a way that we want to do something about it. So I think one of those causes for me was mental health stigma. And just as a content warning, I happened to lose a school junior of mine to suicide during the COVID lockdown period. And I was already, very passionately driven towards psychology. I wanted to do something around mental health, but that particular moment was when I wanted to channelize my energy and reach out to the masses. And that's how I started this initiative called Re-Evolve 2021 and then 2022, which was a series of online sessions in collaboration with the mental health experts, professionals, psychologists, and psychiatrists. And we reached out to people of different ages from different cities of India. And that was the time when we were talking about stigma, the taboo of seeking help, therapy, and kind of my idea was to break down the jargons, because mental health, when we talk about it, it sounds very alienated topic. It sounds something
Right.
like as if Gen Z has created this new idea. But to break it down and to tell people that we're talking about their body and their brain, it was a successful initiative done over 2 years online. And then we converted into March for Mental Health on World Mental Health Day, where more than 250 young people were on the streets of Karnal, and which was the biggest movement for a small city like Karnal, to be talking about a cause like mental health in public. It's something which is always put under the rug and hushed, that you don't talk about this in public. So that was one of the mindset shift that we saw in people. There's a long way to go, but I'm really glad that we have been able to take Abhivyakti to Bangalore, Karnal, Delhi, Jaipur. We have done a few events in Bardhaman, in West Bengal, so Chandigarh and different places. So we have been targeting different cities. And again, how Sanjoli mentioned that we're trying to keep that approach of not just targeting villages, because it is prevalent in cities as well. But we, kind of assume that people in urban areas are very educated and aware already. So we're trying to bridge in that gap and reach out to people of different ages and bring that creativity, element of creativity into our campaigns. So we call something like Abhivyakti Fests. So we bring in young people together, and through dance movement activities or through different kind of meditation and everything, we're bringing people closer to themselves, and yeah, just encouraging them to seek professional help. So it's been a wonderful journey so far, and there's a lot to look forward to.
It sounds very promising because two, three things are actually standing out for me as someone who also belongs to Haryana and somebody who's queer as well. So a queer person from Haryana sitting. And I think two, three things that strike for me is the idea of taboo, because you have to really make sure that you get into the minds of people. Because
Yeah.
taboos really take time to, to be uprooted in the sense of a belief system. Because you question taboo, then you become controversial, then you become, of course, you yourself become a taboo at some point, and then you'd be like, okay, who's this person talking about awareness? So, really glad to hear this journey of how the change or how the unity has actually occurred in a place like Haryana, for that matter, right? And also even other parts of the country. I have already listed down for our audience in terms of what uh, what fields or what aspects of change making you touch upon. But I want to know from each of you, or like maybe one of you, about the challenges that you might have faced. Because I if I look at activism, if I look at change making, especially from a state like Haryana, which is just a little infamous for a lot many things. In that sense, gaining traction becomes a lot difficult, So how did you tread with that sort of factor in terms of gaining traction?
If I can start, and I'm sure that
Please.
because there are a lot of challenges, I might touch upon a few and then Sanjoli might highlight others. So I think we often hear people saying that don't judge a book by its cover. But I'd say that if you are in a change-making journey or even like anywhere you have some kind of interaction with public, be ready that you will be judged on all basis of all of your identities. So you being a girl in change making, you being a young person, all of these identities that you might feel proud of stand as challenges. And we have been a lot of times underestimated and questioned and challenged just because we are young women in this field. And people have told us different things, and it happened to change, their ideas change or tables turned around when Sanjoli became an international awardee, or our work was slowly recognized by big platforms. But the challenges have been real, and for most of the things, people have questioned our relevance or our credibility and all of that. And I think apart from that, also we see challenge in we don't often see collaborative spirit in other change makers. Unfortunately, there is this wave of competition that change making. I wish we were in a world where where you talk about aidbees talk about empathy and kindness. I hope it was more prevalent, that we as change makers don't see each others as competitors, and who has to outshine the other, who has to gain more media attention. Unfortunately, a lot of young people, when I talk to them, people of my age, they're driven by the idea that as a change maker, you will be set on a pedestal, you will get that media attention. So I think our motivation somewhere is a bit flawed. And yes, I think that's been a challenge when we collaborate with people who don't match our vision and our ethics, our work integrity, then it becomes a challenge as well. So I think that's having said that, there are a few challenges when we are collaborating with the local government or certain people of authority. Again, it's a very male dominated area, whether it's government or particular organizations. So again, we have to have navigate our own ways, and I think the right word would be keeping that resilience on, and backing each other all the time. And I think, yeah, more challenges can be shared by Sanjoli.
Yeah, I mean, I think Ananya kind of pointed out to a lot of challenges that we faced. And apart from those, I mean, a lot of, it's really hard to get things done from the government. And a lot of us, especially in the development sector, must have experienced this very well. It's hard. You have to belong to a certain ideology, you have to be a conformist, you have to uh, be a certain way to get things done if you really want to. So that kind of always poses a challenge if you're questioning the government, if you are anti-establishment, or if you're questioning, it just puts you in a very slippery kind of spot. So that has been very difficult, because I think NGOs can do a lot of work, they do a lot of work, but NGOs cannot solely function. They can always complement what the government is doing. NGOs in themselves cannot achieve everything, so macro level change making, decision making and support, or whether it's resources and funds, has to come from the government. And that is something that has been a challenge big time for us. Whether it's getting support from the local government, being young women, going to government offices in the first place, then getting the work done, then kind of explaining the concept of mental health to them, or menstrual hygiene. um if we talk about like general issues, more prevalent issues, more mainstream issues, they are happy to support. But when it comes to very niche topics like these, that they still carry that, like Ananya said, the idea that has been generated by Gen Z, you know, or an idea that only the rich beer or the privileged or the educated beer, you know, it's still that thing. So they're like, oh, सिर्फ अमीरों को ही होता है मानसिक प्रॉब्लम, तो गरीबों को कहाँ होता है डिप्रेशन. This thinking is still very, very prevalent, and I hear it every other day. So just these kind of
Right.
things, you know, mobilizing people for such causes, that is very hard. So now if I talk about Sushiksha particularly, it's so hard to just maintain that strength. There are lots of kids who are super enthusiastic, very passionate, they're keen to learn. But then there are those challenges at home, you know, that they face. Their parents do not value education as much. They would instead withdraw their kids from us, and they would send them for a daily wage job, you know, that instead children might earn something instead of studying. What's the point of studying? And then they would go for freebies. So if there's some, I don't know, celebration happening, children will skip their class to go to get free food, free charity stuff. So those kind of challenges, then it's hard to maintain that kind of attendance, you know, and keep that motivation up. Then even for people, you know, a lot of people in India really want to do good work. They have that kind of sense of giving back, but then that is also restricted by a lot of factors. So you know, education is one thing. We rely a lot on youth power, but then youth remains so occupied with their other commitments. They have to look for jobs, they have to build their profiles. So now, unfortunately, like being a part of an organization or not for profit has just become a way of securing a good job. It is not, it is not seen as something that they want to do. It is just that, you know, if they are a part of a not for profit, they will get into Ivy League, they will get into a good job. So it's just a part of building their brand in a way. So these kind of challenges, big or small, we face on daily basis. So mobilizing people, keeping people together, and then financial crunch has always been a challenge. We are a self-funded organization. We do not rely on any external donations or grants at all. We believe in very transparent and honest work. So that is always a challenge. Challenge is also when the media doesn't support us. So media's job is to support, is to question, but when we tell, you know, and it's an honest, it's a real experience. I spoke to one of the media persons here, telling them that let's go to the local government school. It's in a very, very bad shape. There are bushes in the toilets. The science lab has been locked. Children are not being taught. Children's future is at stake. Can we please go and question the principal there? Can we highlight the situation and the scenario of the school? The media
Mhm.
person backed off. They backed
Mhm.
off. They were like, we're not going to question. It's a government school. We don't want to be in that space. We don't want to question them. We would rather cover other trivial issues, but we'll not cover this issue. So these kind of things, then you find yourself in a very, very lonely space. So
Absolutely.
I mean, there are lots of challenges, and it's really hard sometimes to keep yourself going and keep yourself motivated. So I can go and on and on, but I know time
No, no,
constraints.
we hear you definitely on that. We hear you because I
Yeah.
think, as you said, the support and the collaboration is something that initiatives like these function on. And even though, even though 100 people don't support you, there are 99 who might sort of, oppose you. But there's that one person whose
Mhm.
support you would definitely require to at
Yes.
least to at least even make that step to go to the local governments, or to even make that step to go to the authorities. So I think that's very it has, of course, given me a new perspective in terms of the hardships, in terms of the challenges, also because the nonprofit sector does work like that in a very conventionally sort of structured way, right?
Yeah.
Talking about nonprofits itself, we have NGO Sarthi, that's started by a father, and I was reading about your journey, and I was really taken in awe about how an entire family can be so inspiring and can be so, like, in my head, the first thought was, okay, what would be a dinner table conversation between these four people who are sitting together and talking about such big, motivating initiatives where they have to change the world. But let's get back to actually NGO Sarthi. And Sanjoli, would you like to take us through the journey of how it started and what is it doing currently? And what's both of your roles? And we'll come to Ananya also in terms of the roles, but what's both of your roles in the NGO and what is it doing exactly?
Yeah, sure. So Sarthi was initiated and founded by my father and another gentleman, Mr. M.S. Punia. Both of them were students of social work in Yamunanagar, and that's where they founded this NGO as part of their education. But this was in 1997 that they registered it with the government. It was long back before my birth, actually. But then they weren't very active with it. It was just out of a positive kind of purpose that they started it, but they weren't very active. They used to carry out certain charity work here and there. But then it was majorly when Ananya was born, that we picked up that pace. So we became very active, started mobilizing people, getting people together and organizing these campaigns. So in 2004. And since then we've worked on various issues like you highlighted and we touched upon earlier. And now Sarthi has been restructured because the next generation took it over. And my parents, they were very active for sure. I think, as you mentioned as well, under their mentorship, all of this started, and we learned all of this as well. So the initial exposure came from them. So my dad, actually, I'd like to share a little personal bit as well. My dad was an aspiring defense personas. He wanted to be in the army and he couldn't crack it, unfortunately, in the final round. But he bears those values. And he's a son of a police officer. My great grandfather was a teacher as well. So we come from a family where people have been in the service sector. They've been, in the service of the society. And my mom bears the same values. So I think both of them kind of had those values and they've instilled it in us from a very young age. So when you talk about our dinner table conversations, they actually are a little unconventional, and I didn't realize it for a long time. I thought that was normal, but then when I spoke with other people, I realized my parents generally don't talk about wealth and prosperity and money and all of that. They would generally talk about ideas. They would talk about current affairs with us. They would talk about what the government was doing, and in that they always included both their girls. It was never that it's only a matter that has to be spoken to boys. Rather, they included both of us and gave us that space to develop our own ideas, our own opinions, the right to disagree. So that has been the environment that has shaped us and made us who we are today. And that is how we've led Sarthi as well. So thoughtful leadership is our kind of ethos, at Sarthi. And now today, like Ananya and I took it over in 2020 during pandemic. And then we got people from all over the country together. So we restructured it. Now we have different departments in the organization. We have 3 major projects running.
Could you take us through those departments a little bit, please?
Sure. So they're just HR. There's an HR department that helps us kind of reach more young people. We have a PR and outreach department, and then we have a design department that helps us kind of reach more people. So apart from that, we have 3 major projects running. So we gave a new shape to the female foeticide project, basically. So now we have Abhivyakti that Ananya leads on mental health. There is Buland on menstrual hygiene that I lead, and then we collectively lead the Sushiksha mobile school project. So through Sushiksha, we create social awareness. So around environmental degradation, around female foeticide. So we gave it a new shape. So we thought, why not target people young instead of targeting parents? Let's teach them young, and they will be the messengers of that message in their families. So that is what we did. So currently, Sushiksha is running in 4 cities, and very, very happy and very grateful about that. And I think the credit has to go to all the young people who are associated with us who do this work. So currently, we're running in Karnal, Jaipur, Delhi, and Chandigarh. And
Absolutely.
Abhivyakti is also in the same cities and in Bangalore and Bombay as well. Similarly, Buland is in 3 cities. So we've gone pan India. We've gone across cities. We have young people from top colleges. So they are part of us. There are also people from rural India. So there's this whole beautiful, very wholesome community today of more than 650 people who are associated with us in different capacities. They are volunteers, they are interns, they just help us spread our word. So 650 people in Sarthi, more than 100 interns with us, 3 projects, 5, 6 cities. That is what Sarthi is. We don't call it an organization, we call it a family. And that's how we
Of
like to
course.
treat it. There's no hierarchy, there's no bureaucracy. Try to keep it very simple and very purpose driven. So that is what, and yes, like you said, awareness is the key concept. More than being solution oriented, we work on awareness because we strongly believe that that is the first step towards change. When people are aware of certain issue, when they understand the gravity of it, change starts from there. So that's what we try to do, a lot of conversations. So yes, that's what we do.
That's really impeccable, Sanjoli. Ananya, what was your thought and like your process with NGO Sarthi when you got into it as a director?
First of all, I'll quickly say that listening to her, I know it's something that we collectively with our team we have worked on it. But hearing that, I think it feels really good that we have come this far. So I was absolutely enjoying listening to that, and I was yeah, in another world. But yes, I think. Being a director at such a young age and carrying that responsibility on my shoulder, I think it has shaped me as a person and as a better professional. Because it's very easy to take up any, position or a role which sounds very alluring, but to live by it on daily basis and to commit to it on daily basis, and make sure that you are reaching your goals and you're, putting in that effort is a challenge as well. So being a student, I'm a full-time student, as you happen to mention in my introduction. I'm in Australia currently doing my bachelor's. Managing that with my personal interests of poetry and also other hobbies. And I'm a very extroverted person who loves to be surrounded by, lovely people. So doing all of that and also making sure that whatever I've committed to, I am living by that. And I think I've learned a lot, definitely, whether it's in terms of time management or discipline or leadership skills, I would say. Understanding my own leadership style and, being very flexible that I can understand the people I'm connecting with. So whether it is connecting with the communities, and I think as a young person, it is even, I think, easier to be flexible, that I try to understand what community I'm reaching out to, because I'll quickly mention the story, might also be interesting for people who are listening to this, that there happened to be a project where people in Kerala, the truck drivers in Kerala wanted to get the most efficient and effective trucks. And through their research, they got to know America had the best trucks. They got those trucks imported, and that was a huge budget that they had to allot. And finally, they got the best technology trucks. When they got it, just in 2 days, there were multiple complaints by all truck drivers. And when questioned that what the issue was, they got to know that because those trucks were used in the coldest areas of Canada and America, there was a system that the exhaust, around the feet of the truck drivers would give the hot air of engine into that particular space of the drivers. And that was an absolute bad idea to get those in a humid place like Kerala. So what I want to convey through the story is that's a story I always share in our training or orientation session, is that there is no one particular solution. There is no one particular idea that will be fixed to all the communities. So we have to do our research, our homework, what kind of community we are reaching out to, what population and target audience we are reaching out to, and then be implementing all of those ideas. Otherwise, we would just sound like colonizers, that we know better, we have more knowledge than you, and then we're going to a rural community and telling them what is right. That's not our idea. Sarthi believes in that collaboration and empathizing with the community. And I think, yeah, there's just so many values that I've learned, and one of the most important one is to do my work with integrity and honesty, whether I might not touch hundreds and thousands of numbers, but whatever I'm doing has to be honest work. So yeah, we stand by those values.
It's really inspiring at such a young age, and I'm really just listening to both of you in awe, and then really just getting more and more inspired because part of my job is to just speak to people who are and curate stories of change. And this is really my fortune to have been talking to both of you because uh, it's really motivating, especially coming from the same sort of background that you do and I do. It's also a certain level of relatability in that sense. So we talk about that, of course, after the recording. But um, we are short on time, but of course, I have maybe a three questions more left. But you were talking about Sarthi and you were talking about Sushiksha campaign. And for the audience, just for the audience, I would like to know a little bit of step-by-step process for it in terms of how does it function? Because a mobile free, and as in a free weekend mobile school sounds a great idea, but there's a lot of execution that goes behind it. So if one of you could just quickly take us through what Susiksha campaign is, and the other one can tell us how you reach out to people for it. So stage is yours.
Do I
Sure.
share the idea?
Yeah, please, please.
Yeah, cool. Okay. So I know I love talking, and please do remind me of the time as well. But yeah, I think how that particular idea began was when Sanjoli was on study exchange in the UK, and we were literally two sisters were on a video call, and we were discussing that how privileged we are that we're getting access to education, and we are coming from a family that puts education first and rest of the luxuries or things at the back seat. And that particular video call turned into a particular project, and that's because we understood that there is a need to plug in the gap between the urban and the rural children, and there is lack of holistic education. Our idea behind Sushiksha was not to give them Western science or just educate them with ABCDs. Rather, we wanted them to be socially and politically aware people, people who are getting on some days meditation class, on some days self-defense or art, music, and dance classes, and also they're able to be part of certain activities. So all of those things were brought in together, and the idea of creativity and fun learning was one of those key ideas as well. And when we say that it is a free mobile school, it's because we wanted to bring in young people who are around our age, who definitely have some talent or knowledge or ability in them that they can share it with others. So that's how we were bringing in volunteers from our organization, and then bringing in the underprivileged children. And in terms of mobile school, it was because I'm sure you know how in a lot of villages in India, there is segregation of different castes and communities within a village. So we wanted to keep the school that could go around, that was not targeting only one community or one caste in that particular village. So we were moving around in the Gurdwara Sab's Angan, or some days in farm or in Hindu temples. So we were not restricting ourselves, and we were going around. And yeah, so
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 did
to
you have a like sorry, but did you have a vehicle with you, or did you were just moving with like you move with just a group of people to a particular space, or is this a vehicle that's taking the initiative forward? Because that works a lot in remote areas and villages. So just the structure I'm trying to understand.
Yeah, no, it was not like a van or like not in
Yeah,
terms of
yeah,
that
yeah.
kind of a mobile school. Rather, we would be at a particular place, sit down, and have those weekend classes at least for like 3-4 months. We are at one particular place, and then moving on to a different part of the same village. So we would
Right.
go from the city by ourselves to the village, and then teach those students at that particular place. So it was no particular van or school bus kind of a thing. So
Wonderful.
yeah, and that's how the idea of free mobile school was implemented. And yeah, I'm sure Sanjoli would share things further. And I think there was another part of the question that you were asking. Yeah.
Yeah, about just the impact, the response, and how it came about in terms of the implementation and execution, Sanjoli.
Sure. Yeah, I think Ananya shared how it was started. So also Ananya, something that she didn't mention was I happened to be on a conference to Kuala Lumpur. It was a Harvard conference that I was attending, and I happened to visit a refugee school there. And that was another inspiration that, that drove me, because I was definitely very, very grateful. So it came from a place of gratitude as well, that I was receiving world-class education, and something that, millions of my brothers and sisters in India were never able to they were never able to access that kind of education. So that was definitely one mindset. But then when I went to that refugee school, something changed in me. So that all of those factors kind of came together, and I became very impatient. I still remember that emotion, sitting in my university accommodation. I had adrenaline rushing in me, and I was like, I have to start a school. And then I was doing quick Google searches looking for how does one start a school. And then I realized, oh, it needs a lot of investment, a lot of capital. You need land, and you need to construct a building, and then you do this. And I am a sort of a person who is, who loves freedom, who loves kind of, don't like to be stuck in bureaucratic processes. So I was like, no, this is not going to work. A conventional school is not something that I want. I was like, what if we change the idea? The idea is to educate people and reach people. Doesn't have to be through four walls of a school. And I was like, all right, let's do a mobile school idea. So this was when our family discussion was happening, and we were like, let's do a mobile school. And like Ananya said, we kept changing, relocating, and we got to target a lot of kind of people from different walks of life. And that kind of taught us a lot. So initial response was very positive. We did a basic survey of the village that we were going to start in. So we tried to understand how many schools were there, what the schools were catering to students, what the gaps were, wherein we could plug in that gap, what the children really interested, how many students are not enrolled in schools, stuff like that, interacting with the local community leaders, with parents. After we got an idea, we were ready to jump in, and just in a front courtyard of a Sikh temple, a Gurudwara, we laid mats. We had white and black boards. We had about 10 volunteers, and we had 165 students turn up on the very first day. That kind of changed everything. We never expected that response. We honestly thought there would be 5 to 10 students who would turn up. 165 students turning up to meet someone who they don't know, people, outsiders, not from that village. And that motivated us, and we realized that, people are really keen to learn. They are really seeking quality education. Although they are already going to a school, they still want to come, that too on a weekend. That kind of gave us motivation that we never looked back. And since then, 4 years in the same village, at different locations, we worked. When we thought that our children had become sufficiently, aware and independent, and they could do well, we planned to change the location. And now we are running our schools in a slum. So in Delhi, in Jaipur, and in Karnal, we're running our school in slums at the moment, in urban slums. And in Chandigarh, we are doing it in a Gurudwara again. And children are from all walks of life. We never wanted it to be only for the poor. I personally am not a fan of an idea where children are segregated on any kinds of basis. Why do we only target the poor? Why can't we bring rich and poor and high caste and low caste and girls and boys, everybody under one roof? Isn't that how the society is? Isn't that how we are supposed to function? Why do we segregate kids, that ye to school sirf gareeb bachcho ke liye hai? Wo idea, wo romanticizing the education for poor was never my thing. So that is what
Totally.
Shiksha is, getting everybody under one roof and talking about very real stuff, not Pythagoras theorem, but actually talking, how do you do budgeting? How does a market work? How do you in the future understand your rights? What is exploitation? What do you do in case of such things? So kind of making them, like Ananya said, socially aware. That is the primary kind of idea. And then comes our certain activities. Then we also have recreational learning model. We do social emotional learning as well. And I am very inspired by a philosopher. His name is Paulo Freire. He's a Latin American philosopher. Wonderful work he's done on education. And one thing that I learned from him, because I'm a student of politics, so I come from that kind of thinking. I learned that education is supposed to be a two-way street. It's not a one-way street. And unfortunately, the schools that we've gone to, we've always been seen as recipients of knowledge. we've never been seen that we also have some knowledge and we can share it with others. So Sushiksha is based on two-way learning model, wherein we believe in learning from our kids as well. So our kids teach us a lot. They are not the only the seekers of knowledge, but givers of knowledge as well. So it's a beautiful, like if you happen to visit us, or if any one of our listeners want to contact and visit, you would love that space where everybody's learning under the shade of a tree, super humid, super hot. We don't have a very strong infrastructure. We just sit under the trees on a mat and we teach. That's it. That's what matters to us, and nothing stops us. No fog, no smog, nothing stops us. So
That,
every
that's
weekend we are there on the streets.
that's very remarkable. And I think the charm and the energy in your voices while you talk about this project actually just that's just the only proof that the audience is looking at in terms of how excited and how how definitely forward you are with regards to the project. And it gives me so much of not just pleasure but also such great I don't know how to contain this or how to put it into a word in terms of what you guys are doing and what you two are up to.
You're
Just
too kind.
closing this conversation because we're really running short in time. But before we close this conversation, let's talk a little bit about kindness and empathy, because aidbees specifically functions on kindness, on empathy, on the idea that we imagine a world where we look at human beings wanting to make a kinder world. We imagine a world where everybody is capable of doing something good. So I would like to know from each of you individually, and then we'll maybe close the conversation off. But how has kindness and empathy worked as two acting aspects in your journey? What has been the role of compassion and kindness within your journeys? We'll start with Ananya.
Sure. I think briefly I touched upon the idea of empathizing with the community that we're working on, and also empathizing with volunteers or interns that we have, to understand their journeys and to understand where they're coming from, why are they part of this journey, what is their motivation, and then taking forward. Walking with them. So I think, and because I'm a psychology student, I think I value empathy a lot. And, I study about how, empathy is about cognitive empathy and affective empathy. I don't want to be loading people with jargons, but the idea is that one idea is that when you're feeling the other person, and you feel that they are in miserable condition and you really feel bad about it. But the idea is that that pity or that sympathy is not enough. Are we able to contribute to make their life better in any way? I think one discussion I was having with Sanjoli a few years back was how, if you all kinds of charity are amazing and we need people to carry that willingness to have that charity in the society. But if you're giving food to a person, it would go away in a single day. If you're giving clothes to some people, it might go away in a few years and months. But if you're empowering someone, or if you're imparting education to someone, it would be their tool and strength forever. And I think we've always believed, both of us have believed in the idea of empowering people, that we don't have to represent everyone. We don't have to be the voices of everyone. We want to empower them in a way that a girl who is in a village also has a voice of her own. She knows who she is, what's wrong in her life, and what she has to stand against. So that is one of the things that we are doing through Sushiksha. So I think there's big power of empathy, and I think what 8Bs is doing is beautiful. I think the most important thing that we need in this world today is humanity, and I think humanity is just a big umbrella under which I think empathy and kindness are very strong pillars. And I think if we are kind towards each others as humans, I think this world would definitely be a better place. Yeah.
Absolutely. Sanjoli, I would maybe twist the question a little bit for you. How has this idea of kindness and compassion worked for you personally? How have you, on a very personal level, how have you, uh, you know, taken around the aspect of kindness for yourself?
Um, That's a very important, I don't know, aspect, Ashutosh, and I'm glad we're talking about it. And as you must have observed in all this while, we both have a lot to talk about, but respecting time, I think I'll really be really short and to the point. Kindness is important at every level of what we do. As a human, as a person, as an individual, I have to be kind to think about the society. And when I'm working with the society, I have to be kind with the people I work. As a leader, I have to be kind towards the people I work with and the people I are in the team, basically, the people I work with and work for, both the ways. So, and then a very important part that we often forget as change makers is being kind towards our own selves.
Right.
Self-care is a very, very undervalued, less talking about topic in change making, especially. And burnout is a very real phenomena that we as change makers face because change is a very, very slow concept. And there are more challenges than rewards in change making. And you're always looking at something to work on, so there are very few moments that you actually pause and reflect and celebrate your success, but you're always looking at the other side. Oh my god, there's so much to work on, so many problems that my country is facing, always that. So it's kindness at the very core is a very, very crucial concept. It's just, unfortunately, we live in a world and in a society which is becoming a little lesser kind. That is my perspective. Not to say that everybody is not kind. There are a lot of kind people, but I think there's a lot of focus on the less kinder ones. And that's what media highlights all the time. So I think we need stories like what you're doing, highlighting people who are kind and who are doing good work. So kindness at every level. I think to sum up our conversation today, if we think, if you're kind towards the environment, a lot will change automatically, right? We don't have to raise slogans against environmental degradation. If we
Right.
are kind towards women, we will respect the fact that, menstruation is a concept and it's not a taboo. If we are kind towards our other people, we will respect that mental health is real. So all of this basically stems from the idea of kindness and respecting that we all have our flaws and we all are very, very, we have very limited knowledge. So just understanding and respecting that fact. And I think, yeah, kindness is definitely one value that we at Sarthi really utilize and try to inculcate in our team as well. So yeah.
It's so wonderful and so important, actually, because something that you said really struck me on an important note that sometimes, and a lot of times, actually, people in the social work sector or the people in the change making aspect of life tend to forget self care, tend to forget kindness towards self. So I think the biggest takeaway from this discussion is also this, that your change making journey does not have to come at the cost of a burnout. It does not have to come at the cost of being unkind to yourself or being harsh to yourself. You are a change maker because you're trying to lessen the harshness for other people. So let's not maybe increase the harshness for yourself.
Yeah.
It has been a wonderful time speaking with both of you, and just because of time constraints, I have to end this conversation. Otherwise, I would have been really involved, and this could have taken longer and longer because it really felt like I am a part of this family that Sarthi is, and I am a part of this family that you
Beautiful.
both are building, and it's really, really to imagine that two youngsters from the country, to imagine the two sisters are championing the cause of social impact and social activities. It's just impeccable. So I have personally learned a lot from both of you today, and I'm sure that whoever's watching this and who is going to watch this in the future as well is going to take away a lot, many lessons and a lot, many things about change making, about mental health, about menstrual hygiene, female foeticide, and women empowerment. So thank you so much, both of you, for joining in at aidbees. And thank you to the audiences who joined in for this discussion and watching this. Do subscribe to aidbees on YouTube, like and share this video. And I will be back, your host, Ashutosh, with another podcast very soon. Thank you for joining in. Subscribe to our channel. Have a great day.